This Kings roster is just dead. It's just dead right now. There's no life to it. There's a pretty big difference between a team that's just playing poorly, going through a rut, struggling, but that can turn it around, and a team that just looks plain dead. Last season, the Kings went through slumps, they went through losing streaks, but it wasn't the same as this where it just looks like there's no hope for this team, because that's what it feels like right now. And Fox even said it after the last game. He just said that they need to find enjoyment in playing basketball and playing with each other, and that they don't have that right now. And that is just so obvious. It's so obvious that there's no joy for this team. And 30 games into the season, I feel like now it's kind of far enough that we can make judgments about this team. We're far enough into this season to know what this team is. Because when you add a player like DeMar DeRozan into a team, a star player into a team, a guy that's been very, very involved in the offense, sometimes it can take a while to get acclimated. And at the start of the season, the Kings looked really good offensively, and DeMar looked like he fit well. And so it was kind of that honeymoon period, and now the honeymoon period is over. And it's kind of sad because the honeymoon period didn't even lead to that many wins. I mean, it led to the Kings being over 500, but if that's the peak, that's not very good. And so now DeMar himself scoring 2 points in this game, and the fit in general doesn't look good. And you could say that there needs to be, more time to figure things out offensively. But I mean, really the problem is, well, there's two problems. One, it's would that even ever happen? And two, do the Kings have that time? And really the answer is no. The Kings don't have that time. And so, I'm not even going to talk a lot about this game. I'm going to talk about it some, but I think we need to talk about where the Kings are at more generally, because the Kings organization had a chance to build around two players, and they just took too long to do it. There were times where it felt like we knew what the missing piece was. They never filled that missing piece. And then even when you add DeMar DeRozan, that doesn't fill the missing piece. And so it's like you're trying to improve the roster. And of course, you look at it on paper, you can understand the fit with DeMar DeRozan, but you still see where the missing piece is on the wing, obviously. And so for the Kings to not have filled that void in 2 years, really plain and simple, it took too long. And I thought that they would have until, this trade deadline to try to salvage it, but it doesn't even seem like that's even going to be an option anymore, because the Kings are in a dangerous position right now. And the reason they're in a dangerous position is because they're actually in an okay position. The Kings as an organization are in an okay position if they make the right decision. The problem is I have no faith that they will make the right decision on what they do next. And what they do next is very important, because they can't just sit here and do nothing. If this team does nothing at the trade deadline, that would be insanity. And so there are 2, maybe 3 ways that you can go from here, because this team needs obvious changes. They are dead. 1, you can blow it up, which the Kings are in a good position to do because they have individuals, and it feels like at this point the team is playing as just individuals out there. We know these individuals would command a lot on the trade market. 2, they could try to make a trade to fill that wing position finally, and actually try to build this roster. But at this point, with how the Kings are playing, it's like, would that even be enough? And right now it doesn't feel like it. Earlier it may have felt like it, but it's like, did you wait too long? That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like they just waited too long at this point. And the third option would be to try to make a really big move where you kind of retool the roster. I mean, I don't know, trade Fox and try to build around Sabonis, and that option doesn't really make much sense. And the reason I'm scared is because I know who our owner is, and I know what he wants. Vivek is not someone who wants to tank, even though it's the right decision, most likely. Even though tanking is probably the right and safe decision. But he doesn't want to do that because he knows in the short term that will, of course, affect ticket sales, jersey sales, all that. We know this. But then on the other end, to actually become competitive, you have to spend into the luxury tax, which he also doesn't want to do. And so it's really a turning point for Vivek's ownership of the Kings right now. He has to make the right decision. Because if you spend the assets that you have, the first round picks that you have, and go get a Cam Johnson, spend everything, go get a Cam Johnson, go in on this roster. If that doesn't work, then you're screwed. And you're screwed for a while unless you get super lucky somehow. And so that's why the best option at this point probably is to blow it up. As sad as that is to say, I mean, this is the tough position that organizations find themselves in. And you either make the right decision, like the Oklahoma City Thunder did, and now look at where they are, selling at the right time. The Brooklyn Nets, they didn't wait for guys to run out of their contracts and sell them at a low. They got a bag for Kevin Durant. And now, yeah, it doesn't look like they're in a great spot, but they were going downhill anyways. So they sold at the right time, and now they're building something. And so this is going to be one of the most important decisions that's going to decide the next decade of this team at this trade deadline, which is super scary. But that's the position that this team is in right now because of how poorly they are playing. And, I see a lot of people, Keon Ellis not playing, Keon Ellis not playing. Like, just stop talking about it. Who cares? Like, you think Keon Ellis playing is going to make a difference? He has played. Isaac Jones, he has played. Nothing has changed. I don't blame Mike Brown at all. He's tried everything. He has tried everything. The Kings' offense has sucked. So yeah, he throws in Doug McDermott and Trey Lyles to hopefully get some shooting. Was it the right decision? Probably not. But what is he supposed to do? And it's annoying me because people on a national scale are starting to catch on to, like the one game here that Keon didn't play, and they know that every once in a while he gets a DNP, and so the narrative is going to become, why is Keon Ellis not playing? He provides everything the Kings need. Mike Brown sucks as a coach, which I just don't believe is correct at all. Like, that's not the problem. Come on, we have way bigger problems than Keon Ellis not playing in one game. I'm sorry to say, but Keon, I love him. Of course, he should be playing based on how he's been performing. He's not the savior to this franchise. He's just not. We can talk about the bench all you want, but when you come out in the first quarter of like 3 straight games and just have nothing offensively, I mean, it doesn't matter whether Keon's playing, whether Isaac Jones is playing, whether you're playing Lyles with McDermott, you're playing Crowder, you're playing Colby Jones. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter when DeMar DeRozan is coming out here and scoring 2 points, when Sabonis is going 8 for 22, when the entire offense is just like, I don't know, not in any type of flow. They just look like individuals out there at this point. You can see what they're supposed to be running, but there's just like no purpose to what they're doing. And they're just not in the flow. We've seen it work. We know it can work because it worked at the start of the season, but now it's not. So is that like the coach has lost the locker room at this point? I mean, maybe kind of, but I don't think the answer to that is fire the coach, because I mean, that's just it. I know that that's the conclusion that a lot of people and a lot of organizations come to, and they fire the coach. It almost never works because Mike Brown's not the problem. This roster just doesn't work together right now, and that's clear, and it sucks because there were expectations, and on paper you could see the fit, at least I could, and in certain games it played out exactly how I thought it would and how I hoped it would, and the Kings were playing well at a certain point, and then they just died. I mean, you look at, let's look at the schedule here. They lost their first 2 games, then they won 5 of their next 6, traded wins and losses for a bit, and then everything went downhill. 4 straight losses. And then, finally they come back with a 3-game winning streak where they won 4 of 5 games. And you're thinking, okay, maybe they can turn it around. But even in that streak, there were discouraging moments in Memphis and in San Antonio. You beat the bad teams, San Antonio again, Utah, and New Orleans, and then you come back and have the same discouraging signs against Denver, LA twice, and now Indiana. And to make matters worse is it started on a homestand. That's what's crazy about this team is you started a 5-game homestand. They are 0-4. They are 0-4. They've started a 4-game losing streak on a 5-game homestand. Another crazy thing about that is they were on a lot of rest, right? It was the NBA Cup. They had a bunch of rest to come in and focus on certain things, and they didn't come out in those games focused on those certain things that obviously Mike Brown was preaching, and that's why it kind of feels like he's lost the locker room at this point when guys aren't focusing on the things that the coach has been talking about time after time after time. And of course, you can just say, the thing that I'm referring to is focusing on the little things, rebounding, but boxing out, things like that. So you could say it's a roster issue, which it is. It is a roster issue. Because that's the thing. Everyone right now in this organization plays a part in who to blame. You don't get to this point with it being on a singular person. So you can blame bad lineups at times. You can blame, partially, Keon not playing, Isaac not playing. You can blame, Monte McNair and the front office for not filling the wing void, not getting guys with size and that are going to do the dirty work, and having Trey Lyles and Doug McDermott be your forwards coming off the bench. You can blame the players for not coming out and doing the little things and winning the 50-50 balls and being focused in certain situations on, clock management and just not turning the ball over when you're bringing it up the court and you dribble it off your foot. Like, everyone is to blame at this point. I would love nothing else than to be wrong, but I do not see a path for this team to turn it around, even with a trade at this point. That's definitely not how I felt earlier this season, but at this point, I don't see how one move for one depth guy or regular rotation guy is really going to make a difference. And I just think you're going to overpay for someone, mortgage your future for a team that doesn't deserve for you to make that investment in at this point. And I think when you're looking at the next, like I said, decade of this team, I do think that the smarter decision is to blow it up. I think you gave it a try. And the thing is, you could give it one last try here at the trade deadline for the rest of this season, or maybe even going into next season. You could do that, but then you're going to lose assets based on who you're trading for. And your assets are going to be devalued, whether that's because they're getting older or because, it's one less year on their contract that you have control over, especially in Fox's case, or because if your team is just dead, guys are going to lose value because everyone looks bad. Because Sabonis is a great player. Fox is a great player. DeRozan's a great player. Obviously, Monk's a great player. I think Keegan is better than he's shown offensively, and obviously he's been great defensively. Even Herter has shown flashes of being really good, and you have Keon who's played. You have all these players that are good, but if you just try to keep holding on to something that's not working, you're just going to devalue all of them, and you're going to screw yourself for the next 10 years. And it's or else you could go the other way, and you could blow it up, and you could try to get some young players, and you could try to be good by 2027. You know what I mean? The Spurs got your 2031 pick swap. They want nothing more than for us to go all in right now and try to keep making this work for the next 3 seasons so that it's 2027. Now we're blowing it up. Now we don't have assets. Now it's going to take us 5 years to get better. And that 2031 pick is bad, or is a good pick because we're bad. And so it kind of feels like a perfect ending to this era if it is the end, because for me, it's kind of like this game, it feels over for me. It's fitting that it comes at the hands of the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton. Not that Halliburton has had a great game or had a great season or the Pacers are some great team, but you get what I mean. And the thing is, I just want to have fun watching my basketball team. And right now, this may be probably is the least fun I've ever had watching my basketball team. Because obviously, when the expectations are at their highest, if your team is playing this poorly, that's when it hurts the most. If your team is bad, especially if your team is rebuilding and has young guys, it can be super fun to watch still, even if you're losing games. Like the San Jose Sharks right now, I'm having a blast watching this team that's almost last in the NHL. But it's so fun because it's a fun team. You have fun young guys, and it looks like the future is bright. The Kings team is like the exact opposite. This Kings team is not a young team. It's also not an old team. And so that's why, like, this is a team that needs to be able to win right now. They're not going to, there's not a bunch of guys that are going to develop and get better. And you cannot wait and do nothing for this team to just get into that old tier, because that's when you're screwed. And I'm just really scared that the ownership is not going to make the right decision, because they're going to want to try to keep, grasping for something that's not there and that's not coming. Because if the Kings decide to reset and get some fun young players and get some draft picks, like, of course, I'll still be watching. I'm going to be watching no matter what, obviously, but I'll be excited and having fun watching, just as if the team was good, even if they're not, if they're fun to watch. And right now, I just have zero faith that they'll make the right decision. We can talk about this game a little bit, though. It just started off like the last two games, like I said, slow offense, just no flow to it. That being said, the defense was good. You had Malik Monk coming out, getting 2 blocks. I thought the Kings did a good job of forcing the Pacers to the perimeter, not let them get inside easily at all, and they were forcing them into contested 3-point shots. And then Fox was scoring in transition. That's pretty much how the Kings were getting all of their offense. And then outside the first timeout, the ball movement got a little better, which has been the case again in all of these games. It gets a little better after an awful start, because it's hard to get worse. They generated some open threes. I really liked how Kevin Huerter attacked the rim. Thought he had a very nice offensive game. I didn't like having Trey Lyles out there defensively, playing the 4, guarding Obi Toppin. Of course, that's when I would have gone with Keon Ellis, or if you want to, Isaac Jones. Because my problem is you have Trey Lyles and DeMar DeRozan both out there at the same time, and those are 2 slow-footed guys that can't get out to the perimeter very easily. And they're playing the 3 and the 4. It's not like they're playing even the 4 and the 5, because Sabonis is also out there. And so that was a bad lineup. Obi Toppin just got a whole bunch of space, so I didn't understand that. Sabonis kind of got it going once Fox went out. He's kind of been struggling the past couple of games with his finishing around the rim, but he got 6 straight points, one off a beautiful dime from DeMar. And then when he went out, we went to Lyles at the 5 and Doug McDermott in, which is just, again, Mike Brown just searching for anything that'll work, because that's just not a good lineup. Lyles at the 5 is better in this case than Lyles at the 4, but then having Doug McDermott is not great. But Fox was kind of keeping the offense going until he turned the ball over on the last possession and then gave Indiana a layup. Love Fox. He was carrying the offense. Still, that just gets me every time. He does it so much, where he will turn the ball over on the final possession with just enough time for the other team to run out and get a wide open layup. I would love to look at each possession that Fox has had at the end of quarters and see how many result in the Kings getting points versus the other team getting points, even with the shot clock off. Because I'd bet it's pretty even, which is really bad. I will say at the start of the second quarter, Doug McDermott, he locked up Benedict Mathurin on one play on the perimeter. He also dove to the floor and won a 50-50 ball. So shout out Doug for doing things that it seemed like other guys weren't doing. But that doesn't mean he was good defensively for the rest of the game. But at least he did something there. Keegan was having a tough time finishing. He did get one dunk, but he had an opportunity before to dunk the ball. Didn't do it, and then missed a layup. And then another moment where he shouldn't have been going as hard at the rim, and then he does, and he misses. So it feels like he's just always making the wrong decision when it comes to finishing around the rim. The Kings tried to go zone, and it did work for one possession. Like, I think the first possession they were in it with, because Indiana had three non-shooters out there with TJ McConnell. I think it was Jarris Walker, and maybe it was Thomas Bryant, so not the greatest shooters, or maybe it was Pascal Siakam, probably Siakam, guys who are not going to just fire a quick three, right? You can get out to them. And so in that scenario, it's definitely not a bad idea, and it worked for the first possession. But then after that, like, the Kings just weren't connected enough defensively to make that work, and Indiana was still getting inside. And then the Kings just started feeding Sabonis in the post against Miles Turner. And he did it 3 straight possessions, missed on all 3. And I'll never understand it. He's not that kind of post player. You can't just post him up against Miles Turner and expect good results. He's just not that kind of player. I don't understand why they kept forcing that. And the Kings, they had the lead and blew it because they wasted 3 straight possessions trying to post Sabonis. Eventually, he got a little hook shot to go, but like, he's just not an efficient post player. That's not how we should be utilizing Sabonis's skill set. I said it after the last game. It's not a good sign most of the time when Sabonis has the most shot attempts on the team. He had 22. He went 8 for 22. Fox had 19. That means the Kings offense is just searching for answers and searching for kind of the easy way out. Because the easy way out is you just throw the ball into Sabonis and whatever happens, happens. Like, that's the easy way out, instead of running your offense and actually trying to generate better looks. I will say, like, the effort in the first half was good. Guys were trying to get on the glass. They were diving for 50-50 balls. They were trying to make things happen, running in transition. But then towards the end of the half, Pacers were raining threes. Monk got it going a little bit to keep us tied there. But then the Kings came out in the second half, and it was just kind of the same slow death that we've been seeing the past 2 games, especially against the Lakers, where it kind of feels like, no, the Kings aren't playing the worst, but they can't score consistently. And it's just like this slow bleed of points as the Pacers slowly built their lead. And it felt like, again, there's just nothing happening. It felt like there was no hope and no like energy to really get us going. And the Kings tried to make a run towards the end of the third. Pacers kind of shut it down. And then the fourth quarter was just, death. So the hope is this is rock bottom. That's the hope. The problem is it might not be. And the way that it might not be is if the Kings just continue to try to, win with this same roster without making changes. Or at least without making, sizable changes that really matter and really shake things up. It's just so hard for me to see the Kings organization wanting to go into a tank. I mean, they've never done it. And that's why this organization has sucked for 20 years, right? It's why we've made the playoffs once in 20 years, because this team never tanks. And so you would hope that Vivek would learn from others' mistakes, because it's not, just on him, because he hasn't been here the whole time. But you would hope he learns, because it's really hard to win without tanking at some point. And it's really hard when you mess up the second overall pick. It's really hard to win. Monte McNair came into a very tough situation. And to his credit, he made a very good trade to get Domantas Sabonis. The problem is, it was almost too good of a trade. It would have been, like, at this point, it would have been better if that trade was horrible, because then it would have sent the Kings into a tank earlier. Of course, I don't actually wish for that, because I will love that, the original Beam team season forever. Don't get me wrong. But if you look at it from kind of a long-term, medium-term, long-term perspective, Monte McNair did almost too good of a job at the beginning of his tenure, building a good enough team to suggest that we might be able to win without having that many assets. Monte McNair came into a bad situation, and he made the best of it at the start, then failed to continue building on it because, maybe he was just scared of, having no assets left to work with. And so the Kings were kind of trying to build without any of those extra assets that tanking teams usually get from, selling players to better teams or taking on bad contracts, things like that. And so the Kings pretty much put themselves in no man's land. Obviously unknowingly, like of course you're going to try to win, like you're going to try to make moves and to win, but it's just sadly where we've ended up. So at this point, my vote is to blow it up because this team just seems dead and you can get so many assets and be able to you never know how long a rebuild would take because at the end of the day it's all about getting that one kind of star player. Getting a Wemby, right? Getting a Paolo, getting a Zion if he had been healthy, or getting a John Morant. It's all about getting that number one player, and so you have no idea how long that could take. But your best chance at it being a short rebuild is if you just say, right now, we're going to pick this path. And so I hope that's what the Kings do. And if they don't do it, then I hope whatever they do works, even though I have little faith in it. Looking at the upcoming schedule, one more game on this 5-game homestand against Detroit. I mean, I said hopefully this is rock bottom. Imagine if you go 0-5 on a homestand, losing to Detroit. Detroit is not a team you can just walk over like they were in the past. So I don't know what to expect. Like I don't expect this team to come out and play with the energy of a team that's desperate for a win, because we've been desperate for wins for a while and we haven't seen that desperation, I feel like. Now that does oversimplify things some, because if a team can be desperate but can just be playing poorly, and so it just looks like they're bad, because sometimes heart and will is not enough. And I don't want to be one of those guys that's like, man, these guys have no heart, because I don't believe that. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. It's a weird feeling as a Kings fan right now, because I've never felt this, because the team before in my lifetime was just always bad. So they never got to the point where they were good enough to have any expectations. So, they never really disappointed me because my expectations were always rock bottom. So I guess it's a new feeling being this disappointed in a team. But as always, shout out to the members of this channel, No Rain and Joe Mama, for the support, and I will be back for the game against Detroit, and maybe even before that, to talk about the state of the franchise a little bit more. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.